Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Josh Shepardson at BChad50. And I guess we should have a little moment of silence for our final MLB podcast of the year. You and I, that is. I've still got a couple more the rest of this week. But it was a pleasure. It was fun talking MLB with you. But definitely ready to move on to the next thing. We'll hopefully finish this season on a high note with a couple big days here.
Yeah, win a little extra money, get that bankroll built up for a little bit more NFL, and NBA's right around the corner too. So good time to win some more MLB money so that we can kick things off right for the other sports seasons.
Yeah, it's going to be weird not having a 7 o'clock lock for every day for a couple weeks there, but definitely looking forward to a little bit of a break. But either way, talking about tonight's slate, we've got plenty of pitchers on the mound that you feel pretty good about, and really nobody expensive. You got one over 10K pitcher on DraftKings tonight. It's Masahiro Tanaka. I'm not touching him against Boston here. I mean, he's been good, and that's fine, but he's not 100%. Really hasn't been all year. So, I mean, you could throw him against in a tournament if you want, but he's got a hamstring issue. That's a situation I'm avoiding. More power to you if you want to go that route. But, I mean, there's a couple guys that really stand out as great cash game options with upside. Garrett Richards, huge favorite against Oakland. He's been good recently. I mean, he's got a solid floor in this matchup. Obviously, game's still meaningful to the Angels, so going to bring his A game. Hopefully, he does every day anyway. And then Jordan Zimmerman, a guy who, he's not a guy with a huge upside, but he's in a good matchup coming off of a bad performance against Philly. But we know the drill with Philly by now. Terrible offense that just so happens to get to good pitchers every once in a while.
Yeah, and poor Jordan Zimmerman has the distinction of giving up an inside-the-park grand slam, which doesn't happen every day. So we'll cut him a little bit of slack there on Michael A. Taylor's dive and whiff, and then the non-backup in the outfield. Yeah. So I think Zimmerman is easily your SP2 in cash games tonight at $8,100. He's super affordable. You can pair him with Richards or Lester. I like Richards better in cash games. I like Lester better in GPPs. The A's don't strike out a ton, and while Richards, when he does bring his A game, is capable of striking out batters in any lineup, I do think it definitely reduces his ceiling just a little bit. But as the biggest betting favorite tonight, and a monster betting favorite, minus 244 at last check, I mean, he's a safe bet for the win. He piles up innings, and opposing Zito, he should get some run support tonight. But Lester, I think, has a little bit higher ceiling. I like him in GPPs. I like Drew Smyly a bit in GPPs, not as much as Lester, but we watched Matt Moore carve up the Marlins a little bit last night. Didn't post a big strikeout total, but Smyly has a nice strikeout rate on the season. Like him against the Marlins tonight. But the one thing I love tonight is a couple of cheap bargain arms down here. In the bargain bin, Andrew Cashner at 6,100. Owners got burned by that used Tyson Ross last night. Hopefully that reduces Cashner's ownership just a little bit. Cashner himself has been a little rough around the edges this year, but strikeout rate's been there of late. And the Brewers lineup without Ryan Braun, possibly without Jonathan Lucroy, who's been in and out of the lineup of late, and without the pieces that they've traded off, they look terrible. They strike out a ton. They struck out in 23% of their plate appearances over the last 30 days. Cashner doesn't have a lot of lefties to deal with in this lineup, which is huge because he has struggled big time with left-handed batters this year. But I like Cashner at 61. And then I also like spot starter Logan Verrett getting the turn in place of Steven Matz tonight, facing the Phillies at Philadelphia, just $4,000 with so many crap pitchers on this slate and a bunch of big bats you're going to want to use against them. Being able to put in a competent pitcher, and Verrett's been at least competent, if not slightly above average as a starter, at $4,000 just doesn't even feel fair. And the Phillies have the worst WRC plus and the highest strikeout rate over the last 30 days. Worst offense in baseball against righties as measured by WRC plus on the year. Verrett's got a pretty high floor, and ceiling actually isn't terrible either, though. I do think we're probably not going to see him pitch too deep into the game, especially since he was bumped up to replace Matz. 6-7 innings is fine though if he's striking out a batter per inning and reduce limiting the number of base runners.
Yeah, and like you said, at that price tag, I mean, it's a very low risk, medium reward type of play. And then one guy that could be interesting, we saw this with the Royals last week when they clinched the division, is if we do see the Dodgers sitting some guys. Mike Leake hasn't been particularly good recently. Actually, he's been pretty bad recently. Over the last 30 days, really not striking anyone out. 10.8% strikeout rate, swing strike rate really low. But, I mean, if he faces a AAA lineup at $5,500, I think he's a nice filler, a nice secondary option because, as we know, we've got some teams that have depth, but this Dodger team, their offense when they don't have their starters in there is pretty terrible. So at $5,500, I think he could be a nice value for you potentially.
Yep, definitely watch the lineup card there. I mean, they're definitely battling for playoff slotting with the Mets, but again, if they deem that the rest is more important to this roster than picking up home field advantage by finishing with a better record as a division winner than the Mets, then you may see the C squad out there tonight. I won't even give it the B squad. I mean, if they dig the bottom of the barrel with these expanded rosters, we've seen some ugly lineups down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's pretty much it for pitcher. We'll go and move on here to catcher, where once again you've got John Jaso down there, really cheap, $2,600. I mean, assume he's going to be in the lineup. Hasn't started in a couple days because they have faced some lefties, so should be nice and well rested for him there. Kind of makes sense as a cheap guy against Jared Cosard, who doesn't miss a whole lot of bats. Not a bad pitcher necessarily, but at that price, he makes a lot of sense. You got to like the Mets, Travis d'Arnaud, stand up there, but I think your upside play if you're paying up has got to be Kyle Schwarber again at $4,100 against DeSclafani, who, as we know, terrible against lefties. Big time struggles he's had there this season. His overall number is 335. Isn't quite indicative of a guy that just can't get lefties out. But, I mean, the struggle is real with DeSclafani, and a power lefty at Great American Ballpark, certainly a guy you want to look at.
Yeah, definitely in complete agreement with Schwarber being the top option. Like the other names that you named as well. I'll drop Chris Iannetta in there in the hopes that Barry Zito doesn't get chased before getting to that part of the lineup. Iannetta does do damage against lefties, so he has a little bit of appeal. And whoever is behind the plate for the Rangers tonight, they've got seemingly a million catchers on their roster. They have a few that hit lefties. Matt Boyd's been lost against seemingly everybody this year. I do like whoever's behind the plate for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you're looking for other options, there's really not a lot that stands out. I mean, Wellington Castillo's got power. He's facing a righty. He was a disappointment last night, but obviously not reading too much into that. Buster Posey would be a guy I consider, but like I said, as we get closer to the end of the season, now it's kind of official, or it is official. Giants not going to be in the playoffs. I mean, I just wonder about the mindset of some of these guys. Obviously, Buster Posey, not your average baseball player, but I just like to target guys in games that matter whenever I can. First base options. Speaking of games that matter, Edwin Encarnacion gets a righty at Camden Yards who gives up a ton of hard contact, and Kevin Gausman. So kind of hard to look past him if you're looking for some upside there. Of course, Paul Goldschmidt against Chad Bettis, who allows hard contact to everyone. And then I think your other top option, it's Prince Fielder doesn't hit lefties great, but he's been hot. This offense has been hot. And Matt Boyd, equally generous to just about anyone holding a baseball bat.
Yeah, I do think the Rangers make for a contrarian stack tonight. They have not hit left-handed pitching well this year, but they're in good form. They do have a few guys like Fielder and even down order Rougned Odor who are lefty but can hit left-handed pitching. Boyd, as you noted, gives up hard contact to lefties and righties, so I don't mind grabbing Fielder. Gotta like Rizzo at GABP against DeSclafani at 4,800. Great ballpark factors for power there. And a good matchup. As you know, the DeSclafani is giving to left-handed batters. I do like Chris Davis, too. And I mean, we've harped on this point before on the podcast. Neither of us are big BVP guys, but with Dickey, you kind of have to throw that out the window and see what these guys do against the knuckleball. Chris Davis does have a couple of home runs against Dickey, has hit him fairly well. I actually watched both home runs just to kind of see if these were cheapies, and Davis went oppo bombs twice against Dickey, which seems kind of crazy, but yeah. I mean, he's got power to go out to any part of the park, and if Dickey's not locating that knuckleball, I mean, Davis is the guy that's going to punish him, and at just $4,400, I think there's a lot of upside there. Just a few more names I'll throw out there. Freddie Freeman, 4,200 against Jordan Zimmerman, is one of the the few threats if he's in there. He really hasn't been in good form, but Freddie Freeman's a line drive hitting machine, so you can always consider him as a GPP swerve play, especially with his play being lackluster of late. All or nothing, Albert Pujols against Barry Zito tonight. Again, we don't know how long Zito's going to last, but if Zito's in there, Pujols gets a couple cracks at him. Pujols is certainly capable of taking whatever slop Zito's throwing now out of the park. And then Mark Trumbo, like Trumbo against Casimir. Casimir's been a wreck of late. Is giving up a ton of home runs, giving up a ton of runs in general. Really like Mark Trumbo tonight against Casimir if he's going to continue to be messy.
Yeah, that's a really good call there. And then moving on to second base, I really like Daniel Murphy against Alec Asher, $4,100.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been a phenomenal cash game play with upside recently. So he's probably the guy that I'll be playing in more often than not. Other options near the top there, nobody that really stands out. I mean, you like Jason Kipnis, but you don't really feel like you want to pay $10K, almost $5K. I don't know where that number came from. Almost $5K for a guy that, I mean, he's a good cash game option, but hasn't shown a ton of upside. I mean, I think if you're paying up, it's got to be Jose Altuve.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I'll throw it out there as I kind of teased before. Rougned Odor has done fairly well against left-handed pitching, and Matt Boyd has struggled with left-handed batters, right-handed batters, anybody that swings a baseball bat at all. So I do think he's an interesting GPP swerve off of Murphy, who I think is the obvious cash games play. I also think is the best play in general on second base, especially when you consider price as well. But a few other names that you can consider: Josh Harrison against Tyler Lyons. Harrison's been good throughout his career against lefties, so I don't mind using Harrison, especially if he gets a good lineup spot. And then, again, this requires watching the lineup card, but if Chase Utley's in there, he's left-handed. Mike Leake struggles with left-handed batters. I'm happy using Chase Utley against Mike Leake, even in a pitcher-friendly park like AT&T. And then at the exact same price point, a guy who I do expect to be in there, because there's no reason to expect him to be in there. Odubel Herrera has been good against lefties and righties this year, so there's not that threat of him getting lifted for a pinch hitter late. He has been better against righties, so this matchup against Verrett is actually a boost to his value instead of facing Steven Matz, who's the original listed starter.
Yeah, that's a really good call there. Third base, there's some cheap options I actually feel really good about. David Freese being the first one.
Yep.
I mean, since he's been healthy again, he's been great. Put up 14 points, and coincidentally, 4 of his last 5 games, exactly 14 points. Usually you think that's all home runs. 2 of them were home runs, but, I mean, very consistent. He's really cheap at $3,100. You mentioned Barry Zito. I mean, this is almost like they feel bad for him. Like, go ahead and go out in a ball of flames, Barry Zito, because it's I get the one matchup with the old teammate and everything, but I mean, at this point, you're just mistreating the old man. I mean, this is like abusing somebody in a nursing home. It's just not fair. But either way, I definitely want as many pieces of that offense as I can get, and at $3,100, he makes a lot of sense. I think if you're paying up though, for me, it's got to be. I mean, really any of those top 3 guys. I like Donaldson against Gausman. I think David Wright will be the lowest owned just because of those big guys, because he's 5,500 and facing Asher. But I mean, Wright's been hitting righties this year as well.
Yeah, I also really like Adrian Beltre against Matt Boyd for $4,400. I think he's a really nice cash games play, but he does have upside in GPPs as well. Price is right. He's been hitting since he's been healthy. I mean, he's nursed injuries all year. In the months of August and September, he has raked. I'd say it's pretty clear that the injury and not age-related decline was the issue for most of the season. And then get a nice little discount on Matt Carpenter, because originally it looked like Garrett Cole was going to be starting. So you get that slightly suppressed price tag and Charlie Morton instead of Garrett Cole. And nothing against Charlie Morton, but he's no Garrett Cole. So $4,300 is a pretty good price point for Carp.
Yeah, that's a great call there. And I mean, he's just been Mr. Consistency, and with a ton of upside now all of a sudden this year as well. So I like that. But moving on here to shortstop, where, I mean, it's probably getting pretty old here in the same thing every day now, but it's Carlos Correa and it's Francisco Lindor, and now throw Corey Seager as another young shortstop eligible player into the mix.
Yep.
Against Mike Leake. And if you're not playing these guys, I think it just makes sense once again in a great matchup, go all the way down to Eric Ibar at $2,900.
Yeah, Eric Ibar at $2,900. You can use Jordy Mercer if you're looking for a slightly different punter. If you just can't quite get to that $2,900, Mercer's 27. He has a track record of hitting lefties, and with the injuries sustained to Jung Oh Gang, You know that Mercer's going to be in the lineup, so you don't have to be too concerned about him not playing there. And then the only other name that I will throw out there is, as you mentioned, is Eric Ibar. Hitting leadoff, 2,900 is a really good price point for him. He's actually been hitting the ball quite well over the last couple weeks. So I think if you're not paying up, you have to go all the way down and punt, because I just don't see a lot of middle ground options. Maybe if you do want to find somebody in the middle, Brandon Crawford at home against Mike Balsinger looks pretty decent. 3,700. You do have power with Crawford, and Balsinger's bad against, well, everybody of late. So I'm okay with using Crawford as a slightly contrarian play at the position.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. And then moving on here to the outfield, I think Mike Trout's the guy you have to play if you're paying up, and he's really not even that expensive. $4,900 makes him, the sixth most expensive outfielder tonight. Once again, Barry Zito, feel bad for him or don't. I don't. I'm going to be playing a bunch of Angels. Of course, Bryce Harper is in a great spot against Williams Perez, who's awful against left-handed batters. Bryce Harper, obviously, still something to play for, not so much with the team, but certainly wants to solidify his case for the MVP that he most certainly will be winning here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, unless Jonathan Papelbon has anything to say about it. But the outfield is a position that I'm not paying down at tonight. I think you can, with the cheap pitching, with some cheap options around the infield, I'm paying up. I love the Harper and Trout calls. I'll throw in A.J. Pollock against Bettis at home. Great ballpark factors at Chase Field. Bettis actually has a reverse platoon split, is super giving to right-handed batters. Gotta love Nelson Cruz at $4,700 against Scott Kazmir. What he is doing to left-handed pitching should be criminal. It's not even fair. You can grab any of the Pirates outfielders with the exception of Polanco. Not a big Polanco lefty fan, but do like Marte, do like Andrew McCutchen as well, $4,700 and $4,600 respectively. And the hits just keep coming. David Peralta at $4,200 at home. He's crushed righties this year. Great ballpark factors. Opposite him, if you want to get a little bit tricky, grab Corey Dickerson outside of Colorado, $4,200. He's actually produced against righties everywhere, so it's not just a Coors Field mirage with Dickerson. Yes, his numbers are inflated at home, but he is still very good against righties on the road. We'll throw Schwarber out there again. If you like some of the bargain catchers, use Schwarber in the outfield. I have no problem with that. And then as far as cheap guys go, Mark Trumbo, a guy that I named at first base, I like. And one steal, there is one chalk steal that the pricing, again, really is a product of the rain issues and scheduled starters getting moved around. Jason Hayward cost just $3,200, and that's quite the bargain for a guy facing Charlie Morton instead of Garrett Cole.
Yeah, that's a really good call. And then I'm going to throw out a couple more bats that I think are GPP options because they are facing Matt Boyd. You got Shin-Soo Choo, Delino DeShields Jr., of course. I think both those guys are in good spots there. But I'm with you. I'll be paying up. I don't even mind Charlie Blackmon. You mentioned Dickerson. Blackman's got a nice high floor. No one ever plays him on the road, but he's aggressive. He steals bases. You look at his last 10 games, and he's got double digits. In fact, 13 or more in 7 of those last 10. So he's expensive, but he comes with a nice high floor. So definitely a night where, since you're not paying a starting pitcher, plenty of value in the infield. I'm going to be loading up my outfield with a bunch of big bats here.
Yep.
All right, that's going to wrap things up. Thanks for hanging out with us today and this season with me and Josh. Check us out on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel here. And check out the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.